All right, let's pivot into this other conversation. So I was just randomly, I started thinking about the relationship between media, hip hop media, and artists, and how that has changed throughout the years. Terry and I blogged for a very long time, and you're obviously been in hip hop media for a very long time. Jay was in the radio, and then Mike and I are producers, and we've been on that side of it for a long time. So it's something that I've been very invested in and trying to. It's why Bringing Down the Band was even founded. It was trying to open up some more doors for independent artists. I kind of wanted to talk about what this particular landscape kind of looks like moving forward. And one thing that's been really cool to witness, and shouts to you, because it seems like you pretty much facilitated it from my end, at least a lot of it with the Culture United, but also just the stuff you do, Justin. Hip hop media on YouTube is really kind of blossoming right now. Yeah. And it's really cool to see. We've been on there for 8 years, but it's never been like this. Yeah. And it's really cool to kind of see the growth. But with all this, with the media and everybody who's kind of has their own approach at this, my question was, what kind of responsibility does media have to the artists, and what should the artists do to facilitate that relationship? And that's kind of the discussion that I would be interested in having. So
we're in an interesting era. We're in a very interesting era. And shout out to Curtis King, right? Curtis King is an artist, producer, incredible project maker, producer for other people, incredible.
Very talented.
Yeah,
very talented.
Right. And he shifted into the media space, partially, I think, to help give advice to independent artists with the DIY stuff that he's doing. Partially, I think, as another vertical for him to highlight the work that he's doing on his own. Yep. And then also to talk about things that are happening that are relevant in the culture. And when he first started doing that, he was getting a lot of criticism from artists. Artists would look at it, it's like, oh, you're over here with the microphone now. You're supposed to be putting out music. You shouldn't even be doing that. And I ran into a lot of people who were saying similar things in the mid-teens, right? Especially after Joe Budden started his podcast, right? I'm a firm believer that everybody needs to do news on themselves, right? And that's what YouTube channels or social media is, another opportunity for you to do news on yourself and update your audience with what's happening. Now, what's happening over the course of this evolution over the past few years is that, and we actually saw it real early at Hip Hop DX, because in the beginning, let's say, look at when Twitter first dropped, right? Yeah. When you did an article on an artist and you put a link on Twitter and you tagged the artist, they would retweet it. Yeah. Right. So that would bring all their fans to your article.
Sometimes.
In the beginning, well,
early stages.
They're more likely then than maybe now. And what happened over the course of time was artists started to realize that they were the ones that had the influence. Much like, for example, when Jay-Z said, yet they put me on their covers because I earned for them, with magazines. We watched something similar happen in digital media, where artists don't support the outlets in the same way, because they're also their own media, right? Because everyone's their own media, right? So that brings me back around. It's like, well, if you're someone who has an independent platform that is based off of talking about artists or the biggest topics in the space, if you're asking me if you have a responsibility to help independent artists, I don't view it that way. I don't think if your mission statement or if your content strategy isn't that, then you shouldn't have an obligation to do that. Right. Now, I came up in the independent space 100%. I was in New York, running around Brooklyn, working at Brooklyn Bodega, covering independent shows. My original blog is a whole bunch of rappers that 8 out of 10 no one's ever heard of, but Homeboy Sandman was one of them. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I have an affinity for artists that are doing something that they really believe in and they're really talented at it. And just like I do with YouTube channels or journalists or whatever, I like to support people that I think are cool, right? Now, that doesn't necessarily yield the same results in a lot of ways, because what happened over the course of that time too was that artists got to the point where as they scale, they don't look at certain verticals as worth talking to. True. Artists got to a point where they didn't want to talk to a website no more. They wanted to talk to radio. They didn't want to talk to radio no more. They want to talk to Jimmy Fallon. Right. So it ends up being a one-way street. And then you have a lot of artists that say, oh, you only talk about me when I do bad stuff. No, I talk about your turkey drives. I talk about you when you're giving back to your community, your song that came out. But when I reach out for a conversation, you don't want to have that conversation, right? So I look at this as a two-way street.
Yeah.
I think people have a responsibility to support the things that they believe in.
For sure.
I have a music-based vertical, so it's important to me to give opportunities to new artists. I don't think it has to be important to everybody.
Yeah.
But if we're going to have this discussion, we have to realize the fact that artists don't support blogs.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, we know. Terry and I have talked about this for years.
It's ridiculous to me. If you have people who are, at least you respect the way that they approach something, share that with your audience.
At the minimum.
At the minimum.
That's
like,
it.
what are you talking about? You know, the idea that media is here to serve the artists is something that is, in my opinion, is a self-serving perspective to have as an artist in 2025.
Absolutely.
In 2025. You know what I mean? So I'll go back and forth with different people about this conversation because I do run into a lot of, like, people hit me and say, oh, you don't cover this community enough. You don't cover new artists at all. I'm like, just because you only click on the Drake and Kendrick videos doesn't mean there's a whole feature on Nason sitting there.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean there's a whole feature conversation with Coyote sitting right there.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that these things aren't there. Yeah. You know what I mean? Now, if you just want me to cover you or cover your artists, well, maybe shading me on my platform isn't the best way to build that relationship.
And that's where it comes from. That when they get to that point, it's like, why you ain't showing me and my people love? Right. That's where I think a lot of that is rooted in that. Because they'll miss everything else just to be able to get to you to say that.
Right.
Without saying it. It's crazy.
There's different levels too, depending on the size of the artist as well.
Yeah.
You know, like we've witnessed this, as I'm sure you have as well, to where like some people will support you early on. And then like, just like you said, after a while, it's just like we're over here like writing for free.
And I mean, shopping like, your content.
You know, like back in the blog era, we did it. It was truly a labor of love. You know, like we didn't make any money off of our 12,000 posts. You know, like we did it because we thought that it was important. But we definitely picked up some or saw some patterns, if you will, within and how this stuff worked. And I'm conflicted in the sense that, you know. Sure, I think we're obviously in the hip hop media space, but I come at this from being a music producer and being an artist, and that's why I created the platform that I have in general, because there weren't any media that realistically like in that interesting like bridging the gap type of like that would give a chance or promote an artist, because from the platform's perspective, we know that that's not going to run numbers, right? So it's just what it is. So it's like, how do you counter that in that particular type of way is always been a question. You know, it's like, what can we do more? And, you know, to your point, you know, it's like, I think I agree with you. Like, I don't really think that anybody has particularly a responsibility unless they want it.
Not in 2025.
No, but that also goes with 2025 and some things that I preach to because I teach music producers and stuff like that, and 4 days a week. And one thing that I pretty much tell everybody is like, look, you have to study your craft and be good at it. You have to be better than Jackson's one of them. Shouts to Gobinator. But you also have to be a content creator, and you have to know how to. You can be great, and nobody will be able to hear it if you don't know how to reach your people. To your point, I think that was great. You know, you have to tell your own story,
right,
and you have to be able to do that. And that was the second part of this conversation. I'll let you guys talk too, but the second part of the conversation is, sure, in the past, maybe there was a symbiotic relationship between there, but is that even necessary anymore if everybody can be their own and should be their own content advocate in that particular manner?
Yeah, I agree with that. As far as people should be their own content creator and manager in news, so to speak. But at the same time, people that are creating this content on your behalf, we're not doing this as a fan club. So you don't have to look at it and approach it like, they're just trying to pull on my coattails. No, we actually appreciate the music and what you're doing as a whole, and not just you. That's the whole reason we got in this space. It was almost like we were looking on the outside, looking in from a media point of view. It's like we see something that needs to be filled, and we're creating you know what I'm saying? We're filling that void essentially as fans of music, and as also somebody that wants to contribute something to it on your behalf. But this isn't a fan club. You still need to what I'm saying, push what we're doing to help yourself, essentially, because we're putting you in a position to where there's eyes and ears that never heard of who you are. You have your own fan base over here, and we're creating a tastemaker space to introduce more people to you because we appreciate what you do, and we think more people should appreciate it as well.
Yep.
And then for you not to feel like just sharing it or giving just a little shout out, you know what I'm saying, for what we're doing, it's like the labor of love gets lost, and it's like we don't want to do it anymore. Based on that, it's not a don't meet your heroes type situation, but it kind of feels like that because it's like if we're trying to pretty much extend this olive branch to you to help your career, and something as simple as just resharing or acknowledging the situation doesn't get done, and it's like, what are we doing? And then to your point, when they get to a bigger level, it's like, okay, we're not going to look back at them anymore. After we've literally helped you, like, not, you know what I'm saying, nothing monetarily, anything like that, but the content creators are helping you expand your reach. That's free promotion for you. So in turn, you should free promote us as well, because we're all in this together at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying?
It's symbiotic.
I think as the artist ascends, that happens. It's almost the concept of, you always hear people say, don't forget where you come from. And a lot of people take for granted who was there to the Drake line. You wasn't with me shooting in the gym. Sometimes people lose sight of who was actually shooting with them in the gym. To Terry's point, it's deeper than money. It's deeper than paid promotion. It's the set of eyes that you would not have had if you didn't use us as a platform. That helped you. I'm not saying it's the reason you got on. It's the reason that you blew. It's not about that. But that part should be honored. That small part should be honored. It should go both ways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's that hard of a concept. Like, just show love. Like, it's not that hard.
Yeah, and I think also artists have to understand that certain things are lost leaders, right?
Yeah.
Like for a publication to spend time talking about some artists who probably doesn't really have fans.
Yeah.
Or the fans that they have don't necessarily move the needle in terms of the time cost of money that was put into that feature piece or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is kind of disrespectful.
No, it is.
Oh, no, it is.
Disrespectful.
100%.
It's my time, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's 100%.
I created something called Hollywood Freestyle at Hip Hop DX when we first opened our LA office. And it was real simple. Like, artists come by, they climb a ladder, they rap on the roof, they climb down the ladder. That was the whole package, right?
Yeah.
And it helped us because we were learning how to do video. It ended up being the product where we taught interns our standards and our style guide, video style guide. None of the videos really did numbers like that, but it was a successful loss leader because it did two things. One, it branded us in LA, so people knew we were in LA, because prior to that, we were just an online website. Mm-hmm. You couldn't really just pull up and see us. Two, it was a bat signal to up-and-coming artists, particularly in LA or anybody coming to LA, that, there's a place that'll give us an opportunity to show our skills and be on a noted platform, right? And so that became invaluable because we built a lot of goodwill in the community through that.
Yeah.
And they, generally speaking, those artists always shared it. It wasn't, generally speaking, overall, it wasn't super viral at any point in time. But it was understood in my mind when I created this thing that it was a loss leader.
Yeah.
This product here is to build relationships. This product here is to brand ourselves as people who care.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's what this is for.
Yeah.
And so it worked in spades. I mean, there's so many artists now who will thank me for that, for that first look, which I appreciate. But at the same time, I also know what that's like when I was covering artists that no one heard of in my own blog. Mm-hmm. When I would sit there and go to a show and sit in the back of a musty club writing about rappers, putting together 6,000 word reviews that no one read, and then I put it up and mofos can't even retweet it.
It's ghosted.
Right. So it's like, okay, well, I'm not sure how valuable it is to spend time in this space. And what that ended up doing is it makes a lot of content creators feel like it's just really not worth it talking about new artists.
Right.
And then now you got a bunch of artists who say, oh, no one covered me on my come up. Well, that is because there isn't a symbiotic relationship. There's a lot of times there's an adversarial relationship between artists and media.
Yeah.
Look at media is only there to show up to talk about the bad news.
Well said.
Well, sometimes I talk about the good news and you don't want to share it. I had a very public argument with a very famous rapper one time.
How famous?
Very famous. It didn't go well.
Okay.
But he was like, I was like, yo, can we finally get this interview?
Yeah.
And he was like, he said, oh, Hip Hop DX, huh? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you didn't put me on your year-end album, or your year-end list. And I'm like, our top 25 albums of the year? He's like, yeah. I was like, you're number 26. And then he was like, see, you don't even support me. I'm like, what are you talking about? We support your turkey drives. We support your single release. We support your album release. We give you a favorable album review. We've been hitting your PR up all year long trying to schedule an interview with you because you're a feature-focused artist for us, and we still haven't got it yet. You went Hollywood. That's when he got very upset at me.
Well,
all his friends got upset at me too. But before that, that is part of the issue.
Yeah.
Right? You've got someone who sits there and doesn't feel like we support him because he's not ranked as high as he thinks he should be, and doesn't bother to retweet actually the good stuff he's doing in the community along the way.
Yeah.
We have to look at each other as all part of this community, or the community's going to fall apart, and you're going to have people that no one seems to respect be the only people that people go to for stuff because they got eyeballs, and they got those eyeballs by talking shit.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Facts.
I mean, when everybody here is kind of old enough to remember when Whitney Houston got booed at the Soul Train Awards. It's been documented now, since there's been movies about her, and it was in the Bobby Brown movie, and that's when they met. But, part of that was once she reached a certain height, she stopped, she didn't come to quote unquote urban radio stations anymore. There was no chance for her to show up on Soul Train, and do anything because it was like, okay, now we have her over here.
Yeah.
And so that's part of where the disconnect comes into play. I'm not sure if that is, to number 26 on your list, if that might have been something that might have played into that. But, even when I think about my time in radio, at one point, like everybody got walked in because, what there is to be an independent artist then was completely different. It might have been raucous, but we still had major label hookups if you peeled the onion back far enough. But, if you were on Universal, if you were on Atlantic, if you were on, whatever Def Jam was at the time, there was somebody, you had a record rep that walked you in and said, this is the record, this is that, and the third. But it was also might have done it in store if you don't, when there were record stores. Man, there are people who are like, I don't even need to talk to the radio anymore. So why am I going to sit down and talk to this website? Why am I going to talk to this blog? I can just create, like you said, create your own content, which we think is necessary. Like if you got a new project out and you got an Instagram following, you better be on there every other day, walking your dog, going to the cleaners. This is the restaurant I'm eating at before I go to the studio to put the finishing touches on said project. You have to make basically your own show.
Yeah.
Because there's no point in you just saying, okay, I'm going to put something out. Yeah, hopefully y'all find it. I don't care what artist you are. That's why you see certain artists, they might have 2 million followers on Instagram, but they can't sell 12,000 records their first week or get 12,000 equivalent streams.
Yeah, it's
because
very selective.
Because they just put the day they release the album, it's like, my album's out, go get it. Go stream it.
Yeah, like you could actually use Kanye as an example when it comes to this type of situation. He hates the media until he doesn't. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's like situations in his document, it's on camera, where he doesn't want any paparazzi, or then he's posing for paparazzi, or he's doing this situation now where we don't know who Kanye West is anymore because
we know.
Because he's just doing all kind of crazy shit, and he'll delete it, but he knows somebody else is going to share it. He's not going to go sit down with those people that share it, but he's still using that vehicle to share his so-called promotion that he's doing. You know what I'm saying? And Kanye's a different type of artist. A lot of these newer artists try to use the same exact formula to shit on the people that are promoting them, but you're not that big yet.
True.
You know what I'm saying? You're not an anomaly in the game to where you can take those risks. You actually need to go back and sit down with some other people. You're not a mega star to where you can just create your own situation and sit back and let it do what it does. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think anybody's bigger than that necessarily.
To go back.
Yeah, but I don't know. I kind of want to shift the conversation a little bit, not too far. I mean, unless anybody has anything specific to say, but same type of conversation. But I've seen you mention a couple times talk about super fans, so I know you're familiar with the concept. And we've talked about that many times. In general, there's great books. There's a book called Super Fans. It's great to read. There's lots of content out there, around that. And I feel like with everything that we're kind of talking about here, like I think it's important for artists to build their own thing as well as to collaborate with as many people that they feel like they can resonate with at the same time. But I do feel like it's extremely imperative that they understand, and not just like artists, like pretty much all creators, to understand this idea around super fandom and creating your own community and thing in general. And to me, I feel like that is kind of where we're at. And I feel like that's kind of the solution in general. But if that kind of makes any sense.
Kind of. I mean, I see what you're saying. The artist needs to do that. They definitely need to embrace that moment. But they need to lean on other avenues in order to get other eyes and ears on them. Because you're creating your super fans. Okay. So I'll use Anderson .Paak as an example. Remember when we were blogging, Anderson .Paak had dropped and nobody knew who Anderson .Paak was. But we had been blogging about him for a long time. Then all of a sudden,
Catronata too.
Yeah, these are artists we've been promoting, and they have their own fan base, but we're still putting them on. Like I'm playing them out in public here. Nobody knows who they are. I mean, they're household names now, essentially now. But just by us using our avenue to do they were doing their super fan thing on their own, and then us exposing them as well was key to those relationships.
I would argue though that like, from the super fan point of view, it's important to like when you get these eyes and ears on you, you have to be able to encapsulate it somehow. You have to be able to bring those people to you. You have to be able to grab them. Like these social media platforms that we have now, like you talk about Instagram, Facebook. Facebook was when I was growing, bringing down the band on Facebook, and then all of a sudden they flipped their model into where you can't reach them unless you pay. I was like, oh, I'm not doing this anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, like you have to be able to grab them somehow, whether that is like, if you're a YouTuber, cool, you have memberships and stuff like that. You can access people, Patreons, Bandcamps, you get email addresses and stuff like that. I feel like that's the foundation of this all. Like you have to have that foundation of being able to grab people and then being able to bring them to your thing. Like, so no matter what, like if Justin shares or we share this artist over here stuff, but they're just like, all right, cool. How's that really going to help them outside of some, I guess the next time you share them, right? You're not really like being able to grab them and pull them in.
Unless you're like an independent artist, like, for all the people, like say when we do our reviews, unless you're that person at this point that Googles your name or, every week to see what traction you're gaining on the internet, it might, what are you really even seeing as an artist?
Google alerts. You gotta put your Google alerts on.
Alerts, yeah.
There you go. I mean, and if you're an artist, if you don't have your Google alerts set up, then you're doing it wrong.
Right.
You need to be happy that anybody's talking about you, whether, it's somebody, it's a platform like us, or somebody says, oh, I went to this show, and you need to find some way to interact with that person. And I'm not saying say thank you, but it just be like, like I said, just share it. If there's something that's shareable, just share it. Or just comment, give a thumbs up.
Right.
There are so many ways to support that don't really cost you any time or any money. And so how can I not just hit the like button if it is something positive?
I mean, there's a few things to take into consideration, particularly on YouTube too, right? I mean, because this is happening a lot more with new artists as well. Monetization is in jeopardy if I'm playing someone else's music. A lot of times they're even sharing the revenue, which is, I guess, a little bit better. But it's like,
it's at least reasonable.
I guess. Like, but here is, I'm reacting to your video to give you.
I'm just throwing
props.
Some bail. That's all.
Yeah. It's better than taking all the revenue. But so it's like, okay, I'm reacting to a new artist. It's not like I'm reacting to the new Drake song or the new Future song.
Right.
I'm reacting to a new artist. And they want to take the revenue from that. And then I put it up. They don't necessarily share it. And now I have nothing but an hour and change to show for it, and work and no revenue.
Yeah.
No revenue.
I mean, the point is, it's not necessarily that that's a bad thing, because I think anything that's worth it to the publication, to the outlet's a good thing to do. But that is a major albatross every artist should understand when it comes to why people aren't talking about you yet.
True.
Because if you're going to be spending time and resources, again, to highlight artists who don't move the needle yet, and they're not sharing it, and you're not getting paid for it, and one of the places when I think YouTube does a fairly good job of, being able to monetize and things like that, if you play by the rules, now there is an ecosystem of people not supporting new artists.
Yeah.
It's another reason why I don't look at it the same way, right? I don't feel like there's an obligation to do that.
Yeah.
Because the ecosystem truly isn't set up that way.
That's been one of my biggest criticisms of YouTube for a while. And I just don't think it's evolved yet to that point. Maybe.
I don't think it will. I mean, it's a major revenue stream for all the labels.
It probably won't, but with Content ID, which is obviously where they're getting paid from, the artists are getting paid from. It used to be a thing to where we wouldn't even be able to share monetization. So it's at least it's gotten to that point, and not everybody, right. I don't know.
I mean, I get it. Don't get me wrong. I'm just talking about the overall
for sure
environment, right? So the superfan becomes more important, especially to the content creator, in my opinion. If there are people in the audience that are willing to get the New Old Heads merch, get the New Old Heads Patreon, get the YouTube subscription, come to the anniversary events, New Old Head events,
right.
that you're getting to your superfan audience. And those are the most important people to cater to. And if they're really interested in new artists, things like that, then it tends to pay for itself.
For sure.
So you're catering to your audience now, just like the artists do, right? And so I think that is something that people need to have an understanding of more than anything else, right? Someone isn't anti-independent artists if they're not talking about independent artists. No, maybe my audience maybe just isn't interested in that. That's not what they want from me.
Good point.
You know what I mean?
And sometimes we don't fully dictate who our audience is. So
we don't dictate who the audience is. And also, if you're not sharing it, you're not supporting your own stuff, actually.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That makes me not think that you're really invested in yourself.
Yeah. That part.
I don't care what it is. People clip me, I'll just go ahead and retweet it. Just let it keep going. It's fine. It's another example of people just caring enough to take a clip from something we produced or something I made.
Hey, we like people that care over here.
Yeah, man.
It's definitely a care podcast for sure. It doesn't cost that.
Costs you nothing.
It costs nothing.
Pay me no mind.
Bro, you can steal our content and share it. It's perfectly fine.
It's fine.
Oh man, we've had major corporations steal our content and put it into documentaries on Netflix. So.
Yeah, well maybe want to get paid for those.
Yeah.
Bro, don't get me started.
I'm not letting no corporations get it.
Man, listen.
We got two of them. Yeah.
Two of them,
We got two.
Which documentaries?
Ladies First.
Ladies First.
Ladies First, yeah.
And Megan Thee Stallion versus Tory Lanez.
Oh, wow.
On HBO Max,
Which both of them we found out because somebody did you know you're in this? Like, oh, no. Thanks for
people
telling
are
us.
hitting me up talking about, man, congratulations. Y'all really hit the big time. I'm like, what? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Fair use?
That's what
I looked into it, and I think it probably does. So, because it was a very, very short
slippery slope.
And it was, And
I knew it was bad when some ladies
they fixed it though. We talked about it the week after it because they credited it wrong, and they fixed it. Like they went back and credited it.
Okay.
So I know they were paying attention to some degree.
Yeah,
so
cool.
Some ladies at my mom's church was like, I saw Michael on the TV the other night. Did you know that? And that's when because we all hit each other up randomly like, what is everybody talking about? Then my mom chimed in. I'm like, okay, something that happened.
Right.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of cool, but at the same time, it was like, that is my face and my voice.
100%.
Right.
On Netflix. And no one even said, hey, would it be cool if you put your face and your voice on this international platform?
Yeah.
Even though that's kind of what I'm trying to do here, but I'm just saying.
Man, I almost got an NAACP award, you know?
Yeah, because when it was nominated for an Image Award, we were like, yo, if we win, we pull it up.
Yo, please believe it. We got the NAACP award. You were going to be holding that award in the picture, sir. 100%. 100%.
And I called myself being a little upset when it lost.
Yeah, like
It was actually a good doc.
yeah. The doc was fire.
Yeah.
Go ahead and run us that award, though.
Yeah.
We win.
Yeah.
That's all.
Oh, cool. I like conversations like this, and it's cool to have that conversation with you here as well.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely, man. I do want to reiterate again. Like I'm 100% in support of independent artists, independent platform, independent media, generally speaking. And I think it's a real shame that that emphasis is sort of waned as years have gone on. for various reasons. Not to say that there aren't incredible independent organizations and artists out there, podcasts that are out there. You know, I think we're just in a different environment. And in that regard, I don't fault people who don't necessarily talk about new artists. You know what I mean?
I get it.
I understand the challenges.
Yeah, for sure.
That's wild. And again, to your point, is wild how they won't share the good. But as soon as you say something semi-negative, then that's when their ears go up.
I want to give a shout out to Nason on this point, though, because I've been experimenting on my channel with how to have new artist conversations. And the Joey Badass situation, this little East Coast, West Coast.
Right. Oh, yeah. We talked about that.
Really gave me an opportunity to experiment with that. And so I have been able to find success with taking 3 new artists in like a 20-minute video and reacted to them, a 30-minute video or so. I found success with that. But with Nason, I found a new way to tell a story, at least new for my channel, on how to tell a story about an artist. Nason is Proof's son. And he's been killing it. Like his lunch break freestyle with Lyrical Lemonade is incredible. His From the Block freestyle is just crazy. He's a really talented artist. And so I did a storytelling piece based on Nason's music that talked about his father, talked about him talking about his father, talked about a few different tracks, used some of his freestyles to tell his story, whatever, in it. And From the Block actually released the revenue, so the revenue came in. So I put it up. I put it behind a paywall at first, and Nason became a member to watch his own video.
There it is.
You know what I mean?
You don't see that
That's exactly what it is.
You never see that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
Shout out to that's perfect.
shout out to
bro.
Nason.
No, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's
that's
really
perfect.
cool.
There
One
are
time for Nason.
people
We're
who
going
do
to
show
get
love.
his we'll get reactions,
Yeah.
some of his stuff.
Salute to him for that.
Nason is he's a genuine cat. You know what
I'm
I
gonna
mean?
have to check him out. I was not hip until you mentioned it. So.
Video on my channel.
Hey, I'll go check that out.
Right there for Nason. Now the video itself didn't do that well.
Yeah.
At least it did like 4,000 or 5,000 views, which I'm not mad at. But that's an example of an artist going at the extra step to support. He could have waited a week. It was going to be available for everyone else eventually. But
No, that's solid.
I respect that.
But that also incentivizes us and creators to care a little bit more about stuff like that.
Right.
I think that's dope too because
Care.
I think
Wrong
that's
choice
dope.
of words, but yeah.
He's gonna people like that. I think him reaching out to see it early, I think that'll have a lasting impact because I'm a person that I remember. As older as we get, I still remember certain people that did certain things for me way back in the day. You can't lose sight of that.
Right.
So hopefully there are more artists like that will start thinking that way because we've all had people that have impacted us 10, 15 years ago, and we know exactly what that person did for us in that moment. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think it's becoming a little bit. For a while, like the Patreon thing, the membership thing was a little weird to people. It's like I could just watch this for free. Why do I have to pay? So I think it's becoming a little bit more mainstream. I guess people are starting to understand what that is a little bit more now. So that's cool.
Yeah, shout out to him. That's dope.
Cool.